Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified information privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, Justin Daniels here. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback, helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, media, and professional services. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more, visit redcloveradvisors.com. Today is going to be super fun. We're going to Hawaii. Oh, Basil the dog is really excited.
I see you're looking very summery in today's work outfit.
Indeed. So why are we going to Hawaii? Because our guest is sporting a really fun Hawaiian shirt. Dahvid Schloss is the managing lead offensive security at Echelon Risk Cyber. As an experienced professional with over 12 years of cyber attack and defense experience, Dahvid has previously worked as a red team operator with a Big Four consulting firm leading and conducting adversarial emulation exercises. Well, welcome to the show.
This was a fun intro. I like that, especially the little drum roll.
We try and have some fun around here.
Yeah, and quickly, I'll just apologize real quick because my internet's been wonky today, thanks to good old internet provider, right? So if I cut out, just let me know.
We'll make it all work.
Sweet.
Excellent. You're gonna get us started?
So we always like to ask our guests about how your career evolved to your present role.
Yeah, this is always a fun one because I came from a very, I would say, more unique background, right? So I started my career in the military as a IT administrator, more specifically as a Exchange 2003 administrator, which is like the pinnacle of being the worst exchange possible, which is like your mail protocols, right? From Windows. I did that for a little bit. It was a good time. It was a fun time, but it wasn't really like anything interesting. I didn't get excited into it. So eventually I decided to follow my heart and I applied for a special operations position and ended up getting picked up, went through selection, which is basically like a 6-month interview where you're doing everything from the teaching exercises all the way down to the physical, all that jazz, right? You fail any part of it, then they're going to kick you out. Got through that. I ended up becoming what they call an RTO, or radio telephone operator. So I was handling communications for small SOF teams or special operation forces teams in the middle of nowheres, right? So I would handle everything from the satellite communication all the way down to the endpoint detection and what's the word I'm looking for? Administration laws and technologies that I personally don't have a whole lot of experience with. And it was a great time. But eventually I started to find out about cyber, right? As a security aspect and hackers and all that stuff. It interests me in the past, but I really never got into it. I had found out through one of my deployments that there was a cyber team, essentially, like a very exclusive and very hard to get into cyber program that the Special Operations Command runs. I decided I was going to apply to that, got them to accept my application, And then yet again, another assessment process, right? So it's 6 months of just grueling learning, everything from how protocols work all the way up to, how do you exploit them? And this particular course was a zero fail course, which meant you had to get 100% on the test or you weren't making it pass. And if you failed, you're out. There's no second chance. So extremely stressful. It was a terrible time, but I ended up graduating there. I was number 58 as a graduate for a course that's been running for about 10, 11 years at that time. So I was super proud of that. That was exciting. Did that for a couple of years doing special operations, OCO or offensive cyber operations. So got to do some really, really cool hacking for the United States of America and its allies. Got to see some really cool tools. Learned a lot, but I had injured myself prior to going into that role from my old job. So I ended up getting out of the military. Once I got out of the military, a good buddy of mine gave me a shot at a Big Four firm as a red teamer. And then I started doing this commercially. And then, the rest is written in stone. Did that for a couple of years, came here to Echelon, and now I run our offensive security service.
So let's talk a little bit about red teaming, because many people might have no idea what that means other than I'm the red team and someone else is the blue team. So can you help explain what that is and how it ties to the land of security?
Yeah, of course. So red teaming is a concept that's actually borrowed from the military. In the military, there's a phrase that's called, or that's said as, you train as you fight. Right. So when you're going to go deploy, you go through some deployment training where you learn combat techniques against the perceived enemy at the time. Right. So if you're fighting a guerrilla warfare centric force, your opposing force that you're training against should be emulating guerrilla warfare. And so it's this idea of like really getting into your head. Okay, this is our tactics. This is how we're going to go ahead and combat that. So in red teaming, and like a lot of cyber principles, we're doing exactly that. We're coming in and we're emulating truly how a criminal would act in this sphere. Not just a criminal, but also like nation state criminals, right? We might say that spies aren't crimes, but let's be real here. If it's against a different nation, it typically gets prosecuted as one, right? So it doesn't stop at just like a normal pen test. A pen test, you come in and you're like, oh yeah, let me just go ahead and hit anything and everything that I possibly can. And I'll give you a report that says, here is all our findings. We were able to get to domain admin. We were able to exploit this machine, so on and so forth. Red teaming is like a very direct kind of testing. When we go in as a red team, we're not going in with the idea to just exploit anything and everything. Usually there's the trusted agent will provide us with a list of objectives like, hey, I want you to steal this PII, or I want you to execute ransomware, right? In some form or fashion. Of course, the ransomware is neutered, so it doesn't actually do any damage, but getting to the point where you can commit those acts of criminal behavior is important. So nothing's really off the table, right? The Bangladesh bank heist started with a physical attack, and those North Korean actors were able to pull out close to $1 billion. They didn't get away with $1 billion, but they were able to pull it out, right? So red teaming gives this ability for companies to have a really unique viewpoint into how well are their processes and procedures actually detecting criminal behavior.
Thank you for explaining very clearly. I think a lot of people will have a better sense of what that is.
So I'm going to dovetail on a question that you asked when we had lunch with Dahvid, which is, we read a lot about DEF CON, and somebody I had lunch with recently said, the hotel had problems with the hackers because they decided to show off their skills by hacking into some of the shall we say, hotel customers. So would love to get your help educate our audiences. What is the purposes of having these conferences where all the hackers get together and talk about how they hack?
Yeah, so this is always a fun conversation because I think it is one where it's open to debate, right? And it kind of comes around the same idea of responsible disclosure. If for those who don't know what responsible disclosure is, when we find an exploit, we have to privately tell that company before we go and publicly release it, right? Or else those companies get angry. And really, cyber is the only industry that does responsible disclosure. And hacking conferences are essentially of responsible disclosure because it's not selling an exploit straight to the dark web, right? It's not going out and being like, here's a new C2 or here's a new ransomware agent. Instead, it's coming out and explaining in clear detail what they found and how they found it. And that not only provides us as red teamers with better ammunition for our own engagements, but it also provides blue teamers or the defense people in the network with ammunition to fix those issues. Because if you don't share the knowledge, then it forever stays as a hidden issue, and then the next thing you know, it's being exploited in the wild. As far as like with DEF CON and whatnot, with its allowance of those who have less than noble intent when they go out into a network, I think even them sharing their stories and sharing the information that they've learned from times does provide us with the ability to only get better and stronger as a cybersecurity. If we don't improve ourselves by talking, and listening to those actual attacks and how people are exploiting it, we're never going to get better at it as an industry. I think that's the TLDR right there. I kind of lost this train of thought when I noticed all those packets drop.
That's okay. I think it's kind of fascinating that you have a system up that can tell that. So.
Oh, I'm just straight running ping onto Google. It's been a wild, fun time with my ISP. They refuse to fix the issue.
Do they not know who they're dealing with? I guess they don't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
I will not comment on that second piece. Yeah.
I understand.
So you mentioned some of the areas that you can learn from those conferences. So what are some of the common exploits that you're seeing time and time again?
The simplest of stuff, right? We like to look at security as like, what's the exciting thing? What's happening right now? Right. For example, let's take the exploit Bluehost, which is an RDP remote code execution.
David,
that's exciting. Yeah.
David, I have to interject. David.
Yeah.
When you use the word RDP and remote desktop protocol, our audience is not likely all to know what that is. So please continue. Just translate that into what we would understand it to be.
Yeah. So no, a lot of times I get stuck in my pathways, even in the military, like everything's an acronym, right? And cyber is just as bad. So yeah, I'll keep walking it through in my brain. But no, so basically what I was saying with remote desktop, the remote desktop protocol, remote code execution, called Bluekeep is very exciting, right? It's like, oh, cool, you can get exploitation this way. Everybody went out to fix it. Similar to Log4j, right? Everybody goes out to fix it. But the most basic, simple things like file sharing between your Windows network, there's a thing called SMB. You don't really need to understand what the SMB stands for. It's just a file sharing protocol, essentially, which I can never remember. I think it's Samba or something like that. You can sign the communication pass and back forth, right? It says, hey, this is legitimate and yep, I accept that this is legitimate. By not having that signed, you can actually exploit it so that it will give you the user credentials of the individual that you're trying to capture, which then can be later used for cracking the password. And then all of a sudden you have a new user that you can bounce back and forth to. But that's been known for many, many years, 10, 12 years since the conception of Windows file sharing, essentially. So just kind of the basic security hygiene, basic security protection, that's really where you see a lot of the exploits coming through.
What are some of the other common basic security measures that you see companies not have?
Give it 1, 2. Okay, we're back. Yeah, I'm literally like watching it to the side and I'm like, you asked the question, I can see it just start to time out. I'm like, oh, great. Cool. No, so I think that the big thing comes down to passwords, right? People are still using, if you go out and look at the top 100 passwords in the world, people are still using password, right? Or password 1234, password 1234 bang, or bang is the exclamation point, right? Like it's so simple that you can almost spray essentially to go out and like guess the password for a user based off of the basic 100s. If the company is located in a major sports city, right? You put the sports team's name and then the year, and then maybe an exclamation point, and that tends to get a lot of success as well, right? So just based off the geography of where these companies are, you can start to guess what their passwords are, and just having a weak password policy can lead to a lot of exploitation. And then you start thinking, okay, well, how about MFA? All right, yeah, so MFA is a big thing. People are starting to use it a lot, but a lot of companies still use push-based MFA. That's where, on your phone, you go through and you're like, okay, let me click yes, I accept. So let's say you figure out the password for something. You do that at 9 a.m. How many times do you see people just kind of go, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead, right? Because they're logging into their own systems at the same time as well. So you can start getting past password issues right then and there. So I usually recommend trying to utilize like a password manager, something like LastPass or others, Keeper. I mean, there's plenty in the business out there that are really, really strong. But yeah. So yeah, that was the end of it. It was just like, hey, yeah, get your passwords, set your passwords right.
The coolest part of this interview is that you know exactly when you drop and when you don't. That alone qualifies you as being a unique guest. I guess I wanted to ask you a follow-up about password managers, because we do talk about them a lot on the show, which is, in your view, how secure are they? What I mean is, obviously, if someone steals my phone, they'd have to know my digit to get through the Apple iPhone. And then if they could then click on my password manager. So outside of that, in your opinion, how reasonably secure are these password managers? Because it is a common point of failure, because if someone gets a hold of that, you've presumably put all of your passwords there.
Yeah. So I like to say never use a first or second party password manager, right? And by that, I mean, don't have Google store your passwords. Don't have Chrome or Firefox or Apple store your passwords, right? Those are first and second parties. And the reason being is because it's one step, right? Hey, I exploited your Google account. Now I have all your Google passwords, right? I always recommend using a third-party app like LastPass or a Keeper, or I mean, there's tons to go around here, but they're usually add-ons to your device or your browser. And the reason why these are nice is because it's a different password than what's on your phone, right? So like for my phone, I grab it, I put the fingerprint on there, and then I can go to my LastPass app and I have to put in a different password. So on top of that, I use a little nifty hardware device called a YubiKey. There we go. These little things. So even if you found out the password to my password manager, you're not going to be able to get into it unless you have the hardware token, which in the computer, all I have to do is plug in the USB drive. I hit the little button and it uploads the secondary authentication. Or with my phone, it's an NFC, I think is the right protocol. So I just like rub it on the back of it and it goes, oh yeah, we're good to go. So it's much more secure in that manner, in that fashion.
So you're saying basically there's a way when I log onto my phone that I could set up LastPass so that if I wanted to click on the LastPass app, I could get asked for yet another level of code or password.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then none of that data is actually stored internally to your device, right? That sounds kind of weird and dangerous where you're like, okay, it's not stored here on my device. So somebody can't get physical access and then decrypt it. It's stored up in like all these third-party apps. They use a cloud and they all use a encryption method that not even they can read. So it's encrypted at rest that they can't recover any of that data as well. So it's not only protected from the attackers, it's also protected from the companies that are running this.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
There's your lesson for the day.
I know. Well, it's especially useful since now an iPhone can be hacked without them even having to have you click on anything, which to me is downright scary, but that's a discussion for another day. But now I want to switch to a topic that Dahvid and I have talked about in the past, which is love to have you talk a little bit about some of your work with auditing smart contracts in the blockchain space, because that's been a real common point of failure that has led to billions of dollars being hacked on the blockchain.
I think smart contracts and blockchain security as a whole is a very interesting space because frankly, no one's cared about it, right? Look at all these big old crypto coins, right? None of them really went through a security process as far as we can tell. And then with NFTs, with their smart contracts, a lot of times it doesn't seem like there's a third-party audit at all. And so this is a space that we've started actually getting really into because we find that a lot of times it's completely negated as a measure to go through and review this code for best practice or security practices. But ultimately, it seems like it comes down to how developers are, right? I'm a dev myself. I mean, I write malware, a little bit different of a dev, right? But at the same time, still develop software. And a lot of devs, we just copy and paste code. We're like, I don't know how this works. Let me go to Stack Overflow. Oh, okay, somebody else figured this out. I'm just going to copy what they did, put it into mine, and change it up just enough so it works in my code. Is that best practice? Absolutely not, right? And when we talk about smart contracts, it seems like a lot of these people, because they get paid to just write these smart contracts, right, for whoever the artist or whoever the company that's commissioning them to do this NFT project, they just copy old code, paste it over, and then they're like, well, we want to do this as well. Okay, I'll write this in real quick. And because I'm not saying that they're bad developers. No, so like the laziness of developers leads to this situation where it's like, oh, well, we're going to change something up real quick. We're going to put this in, but they don't really like know what they're doing. They're too complicit or not complicit. What's the word I'm looking for? Where you're kind of lazy.
Complacent?
Complacent. Yes, there we go. English is hard, you know?
But Dahvid, the other thing is they want to get to market so fast. The business people have no interest in caring about security because they want to scale and they want to get paid.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I think that a lot of these people that are getting into blockchain development, especially around smart contracts, they look at it as a money grab. They're like, oh, here we go, push things out, which is terrible because, you know, then there's no security in the process. We have DevSecOps in most applications now where it goes through a security review internally so that they can be like, oh, well, this makes no sense. You're just allowing somebody to jump in right here and mint for free. But that doesn't necessarily exist yet in the NFT and smart contract space. And it's only a matter of time where we are losing a ton of money, and where these bigger companies that are coming into this space to build their own NFTs are going to start realizing, like, we didn't get to where we are today without like running into the poor security practices of 10 years ago. You know, and I don't want to think that it's going to take 10 years for NFTs to get there, because that just means it's going to be a collapsible market right then and there, right? There's nothing sustainable about that, especially in the modern day where people are much smarter when it comes down to electronics and coding.
So it's fair to say we can create whatever kind of consensus or trustless protocol we want, but if we don't have basic security, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the same principle of zero trust, right? Everybody says zero trust, zero trust, zero trust this, zero trust that. If you went to RSA, everything was zero trust, right? That was the name of the game. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if you have a platform that says zero trust. If you're not implementing it properly or doing the basic things to review what you're doing, it's going to be exploited regardless.
So we talked about a few security tips already: password manager, strong multi-factor. Is there one that we didn't discuss that you would offer to those listening?
Stop clicking links in emails. You know, even if it seems legit, more than likely, right? Especially with like banks and stuff like that, more than likely your bank is never going to send you a link that says, hey, log in now, right? Or log in at this page. And even if it does, like, you should always check the top link, right? Is it actually going to Wells Fargo or Bank of America, whoever it may be? Could not. Could be going somewhere different. Or in a business sense, let's say you get a link that says, hey, we just changed our managed service provider. So for most of us that are in like IT, like, I'm not evilit.com is like, all right, that's pretty evil, right? That's malicious. But for the average user, for the average person, that looks normal. Oh, we got a new IT staff. Okay, cool. Maybe I can hit these guys up about stuff, right? Just, if you don't know or you aren't sure, just don't click the link. Email your admin, right? Your local people. There's always somebody. Or ask your buddy, hey, did you get this email? Because a lot of times phishing doesn't hit everybody. It hits some people, but not everybody. So if you ask the person to your left or right, or to your friend that you're what I like to call green dot stalking, if you use Teams, it's the reference to that little green dot for being available. You know, ask those people, hit them up. If they didn't get the email, don't click it.
That's funny. I haven't heard the green dot stalking term before, but it's true. You can see who's there or not.
There you go. Well, our last question: when you're not red teaming or designing malware, what do you like to do for just fun?
Oh, well, I guess there's a lot. I'm a big Dota 2 fan, which is a video game which has been out forever, and for some reason I'm still addicted to it like 10 years later, which is a problem, I would say. But you know, past the electronics, past all that, I'm a big woodworker. I built pretty much everything inside, or all the furniture inside my house. I don't like paying like $1,000 for a table, right? I think that's just overkill. If I can spend maybe $150, $200 for some wood and just build it myself over a weekend, I'm happy with that. I think that's a good time.
That's really fascinating. I'd love to see pictures of some of the furniture that you've made. I think that's super cool.
And then I'm planning on changing these two, what do they call, bookshelves? And I'm going to make a full wall bookshelf. So I have too much junk.
Well, if you think about it, it makes sense. He's a craftsman in the electronic world, and in the real world, he's a craftsman with wood.
There you go.
I see the
correlation. Yeah,
I see the relationship. Now I get it.
So Dahvid, if people want to connect with you or to learn more, where should they go?
Yeah, so I have LinkedIn, which I add everybody to. You can just search up my first and last name. I'm the only one. I'm pretty sure there's only 2 Dahvid Schlosses, and I think I finally bypassed the other Dahvid Schloss, who is an artist. So I think I'm more famous than him now. Maybe. We'll see. And then the other one, I have a Twitter. It's, again, at my first and last. You can hit me up on there, follow me there if you want. That one's a little less, more of the professional side and a lot more memes. Usually posting a ton of memes on there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Even with the internet problems, we're grateful for all the wonderful information that you have shared, as well as some of the humorous stories.
Yeah, thanks for dealing with my ISP's terrible situation going on right now.
Well, we hope it gets fixed soon. Thank you again for joining.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.